right, good afternoon, Fitness Southwest Florida. This is Tom. I'm really excited today, and yes, this is me excited. The reason I'm excited is because this is going to be the first video in the mindset section of the website, and that's the section I'm looking forward to the most because I have the most growth opportunity there. And for me, everything begins and ends in the mind for the most part. This morning was a perfect example. Going to the gym after using my brain for a little bit. I like to go to the gym in the morning. It's my best time of day to work out. So it's the right time of day. I'm in my happy spot at the gym. But something I was hoping was going to happen this weekend isn't going to happen. So I just wasn't feeling it, literally. So I'm working out 2 muscle groups that I like, right time of day and all that, but I just couldn't overcome the mindset, even with the endorphins and being in my happy spot in the gym and all that. Again, for me, kind of everything begins and ends with the mind. The great news about that is, for the most part, we control our thoughts, and hopefully our thoughts then drive actions if we can control them. So hopefully what this series is all about is ways to drive a positive, healthy mindset that hopefully will, again, lead to those actions. So what we're going to hope to do is pick topics that are actually actionable so that we can do something about them. So today's is going to be on the power of habits. So as an example, one reason why I like mindset in both of my passions and profession, financial planning and fitness, it's like, why do we know what to do? We're in America. We have more information than any other country. We have more free will than any other country. But both in financial planning and in fitness and health, we still don't do what we should. And I'm very guilty of that, and definitely in other areas of my life. I know what I should do, and I still don't do it, or I, even worse, do the complete opposite. So as an example, why in the U.S. are we 70% of us are classified as overweight? In financial planning, why do most of us retire on a little more than Social Security? Why are we not taking advantage of the 401k match? It's tax advantaged and free money. Why are we not providing for our college education for our kids, and even private school, and even tax advantaged normal expenses as they grow up, like laptops and things like that? Is it that we like to pay more in taxes? Is it that we don't like free money with the 401k match? We don't like our kids? I don't have kids, but I'm guessing the answer is no. So, why is it that we know what to do but still don't do it? So the first one we're going to get into today is on habits, how to break bad ones, and how to create healthy, hopefully new ones. So a lot of the research today is going to come from this book, The Power of Habit. It's one of my 3 favorite books that I read in 2017 as we wind down here in 2017, and it's one of the 2 most actionable books that I read in 2017. So we're going to actually, again, I think it's critically important, and that's why it's number 1. It being so important, and there being so much good research done in the last decade plus, this century, around why, what drives habits, how do we change them, and how do we start new ones. So this one's going to be a little longer, and the way this one's going to work today is I'm going to have Charles come in, the author of the book. He does a really good job of giving you some of the backdrop and stuff like that. Then I'm going to pop back on some of the things he doesn't cover in the video, and then some real life examples from himself and from my life, as kind of, again, hopefully this can become actionable and make more sense with a couple real life examples for you. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Charles, and then I'll pop back on and we'll go from there.
Let's start by telling you what a habit is, at least for purposes of this talk, which is, a habit is a decision that you made at some point and then stopped making but continued acting on. So backing your car out of your driveway, the first couple of times you did it, it took this major dose of concentration, right? It's actually a very complicated thing because you have to do spatial calculations, look in mirrors, reversed images. But when you back your car out of your driveway now, you just do it. You don't even have to think about it, right? You can think about the meeting you have later that day, or realize that you left your kids' lunch on the counter. That's a habit. And the story I really want to tell you today is about this product named Febreze. Does anyone use Febreze? Okay, a couple of people use Febreze. To tell you about this product, which is one of the best-selling products in the nation, I actually have to start by telling you this story about a rat. About a decade ago, a woman named Anne Graybiel at MIT, who's a neurologist, and her colleagues perfected a system for putting hundreds of small little sensors inside the brains of rats so that they could measure relatively small neurological changes as the rats behave. They would do this surgery, the rats would wake up, it looks like they have a joystick coming out of their head. They don't even know, or as far as we know, they never complain about it, right? They just sort of act like normal rats. So Anne Graybiel and her colleagues would do this to a number of rats, and then what they would do is they would drop them in the world's simplest maze. It's a T-shaped maze. Same thing would happen every single time. There would be a click, a partition would move, the rat would be free to run up and down the maze, and in one of the T's there's a piece of chocolate. So the first couple of times that you drop any rat into this maze, the same thing will happen. Click, partition moves, the rat will start looking like the world's laziest rat. What it'll do is, like, you would imagine that it would smell the chocolate and kind of run towards it. That's not what the rat does. What it does is it kind of wanders up and then wanders back, and it'll scratch on the walls and sniff at the air, and eventually it'll find the chocolate and eat the chocolate. But it doesn't look like the rat is working for it very hard. But what Graybiel was able to figure out by watching the sensors inside the rat's brains was that despite the fact that the rat looked lazy, it was actually thinking hard the entire time. Whenever the rat would scratch on the walls, the scratching centers would light up, or the sniff in the air and the sniffing centers would light up. I'm oversimplifying, because if anyone's a neurologist, you know that there is no such thing as like a scratching center. But the point being that this is a representation of what was going on in the rat's head. It was thinking hard the entire time, trying to figure out what's going on. So Graybiel and her colleagues drop the rat in again and again and again. And over time, the rat actually learns the maze, right? Click, partition moves, the rat zips to the chocolate. Gets faster and faster and faster every single time. Doesn't scratch, doesn't sniff. From a neurological perspective, what happens is that the rat develops a habit for running through the maze and getting to the chocolate. And inside the animal's brain, something kind of fascinating occurs. Its brain essentially stops working as hard. Now, what we know since then is that what's actually happening here is that, if anyone, again, is anyone a neurologist? Okay, because so no one can tell me that I'm getting this all wrong, which is great. Essentially what's happening is that cognition is moving from the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain where essentially decision-making occurs, the most evolutionary advanced part of the brain, into the basal ganglia, which is near the center of your skull and is one of the oldest parts of your brain, and almost every animal has a basal ganglia. As cognition moves from the prefrontal cortex into the basal ganglia, your brain works less and less hard. This is why habits feel so automatic. Is because in one sense, when something becomes a habit, your brain has kind of gone to sleep. You're no longer participating in decision making around that activity, except at two kind of interesting points. If you'll notice, what happens is that the brain activity of the rat would spike at the beginning of the habit when it heard the click. And then it would spike again at the end when it found the chocolate, as if it was shaking itself awake to sort of get the reward and figure out what was going on. This is the neurological signature of a habit. About 40% of the actions you take every day, according to a study from Duke, are habits. And every single time you do, if we could put hundreds of sensors into your brain, which I would not recommend, this is exactly what we would see. You would see this pattern of a spike of activity at the beginning and a spike of activity at the end, and relatively low neurological activity in the middle, as your basal ganglia in particular takes over and uses less power. In fact, this is such a predictable pattern that scientists call this the habit loop. Every single habit has three components. There's a cue, which in this case was that click, or for any behavior that you have is some type of visual or emotional or some other trigger that tells your brain, now it's time to hand things over to the basal ganglia, where the behavior will start to unfold automatically. And that behavior itself is the routine. But then at the end of every single habit, there's a reward. And this is how your brain learns or decides to encode this pattern for future use, to essentially remember it in some of the deeper parts of your brain. Discovering the habit loop is kind of revolutionary, because what's happened in the last 10 years as neurologists have begun to understand exactly how to identify and manipulate cues and rewards is that we've begun to understand why some behaviors become habits. Smoking is a great example, right? Does anyone smoke? Is anyone willing to admit that they smoke? At this point, you can't. What's interesting is that we all think of smoking as a physical addiction, and that's true, right? Nicotine is physically addicting, but only for about 100 hours after your last cigarette. Once nicotine is out of your blood system, there is no physical addiction to it anymore. And yet we all know people who 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years after they quit smoking, when they sit down with their morning paper, they have an urge for a cigarette. That's not a physical addiction asserting itself. It's the habit. The cue there is that, in fact, the morning paper and the routine is that they used to light up. And the reward was that nicotine is actually makes you feel, gives you energy, right? Nicotine is actually kind of fun. That's why people smoke. And in fact, as therapies have begun recognizing the cues and rewards in people's lives around smoking, the smoking rate has plummeted, in particularly in the last 7 years, for a number of reasons, but part of it being sort of this identification. In addition, I'm sure everyone here is familiar with smartphones. Research in Motion about 7 years ago was doing some research and figured out that if they could make their phones vibrate, that for some reason people's use of them for the BlackBerry all of a sudden doubled. And the reason why is because a vibrating phone in your pocket provides an obvious cue. And in fact, they did neurological studies where they would try and figure out what was the reward that was being provided. And it's that once you're triggered with this curiosity of why did someone just email me, you have this unbearable craving to actually check and see what it is, because intermittently, some of those emails that you receive will be kind of fun to read, right? Particularly more fun than maybe having conversation with your 3-year-old at the dinner table. So when your phone vibrates in your pocket, even though you know, and I'm speaking as someone who has a 3-year-old that I make conversation with about superheroes every single night, even though you know you should ignore that vibrating phone, the cue has triggered this craving, this routine of checking and trying to get that reward. And moreover, this insight has helped and create a number of positive habits. There was a huge experiment that was done a couple of years ago about creating exercise habits. And what they found was the most effective way to create exercise habits is to ask people to choose obvious cues. Always exercise at the same time each day, or put on your running shoes before breakfast. And more importantly, to choose a reward at the end. In particular, eating a small piece of chocolate after you've worked out. And the reason why, it seems counterintuitive, right? The whole point of working out is to lose weight, and yet these scientists are telling you to eat a small piece of chocolate. It's because initially your brain does not believe you that you enjoy exercise. And so you have to trick it for the first couple of weeks. And what they found, this was a huge study in Germany, was that in about 2 or 3 weeks, people stopped eating the chocolate. They didn't need the chocolate. Their brain learned that it would eventually be delivered endocannabinoids and endorphins, things that make you, that are rewarding. But in the meantime, you have to sort of trick your neurology. The point being just that this habit loop is kind of an interesting insight, and that the implications of it, once you can begin breaking down behaviors, are relatively significant. But
all right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed Charles and got a fair amount out of that, of the background. So as you can see, I have the habit of rocking, so I apologize for that. I know it's not a good video, so again, sorry about that. But a couple things I want to make clear from the videos and the book is that the 3 parts of the habit are the cue/trigger, then we have obviously the routine, and then we have the reward. So the cue/trigger develops a craving. That craving could be mental, emotional, or physical. We satisfy that craving with the routine that's learned over time, and that's our reward, satisfying the craving. And so the reward sends a positive stimulus to the brain that, hey, that choosing that routine gives us a reward, and then it becomes ingrained in the brain and becomes a habit. So one of the key elements of knowing that is almost all habits are always in our head. They in the brain. The book and the videos talk about how they're always there 100% of the time. We can never just kill a habit and it stay dormant forever. It's always there. So the way to combat that is we have to come up with a routine that satisfies the craving. So the cue and the trigger can stay the same. The reward is, again, satisfying the craving. So the way we attack breaking a bad habit is we have to create a new routine to satisfy the craving. Again, mental, physical, or emotional. So from Charles's own life, every day at work around 3 o'clock, he would get up and go down to the break room, the cafe, whatever, get a coffee, soda, and a sweet treat, one drink and a treat. He was trying to lose weight, so he's getting anywhere from 300 to 500 calories. So he was down there for about 20 minutes, interacting with fellow colleagues and stuff like that, and taking a little break from work. So he had a physical, was it the sweets that he was truly craving? Was it mental? a little mental break from work, or was it emotional, kind of the social interaction? So the way to figure out which one it is, again, I'm a black belt, but mine's a geek black belt. So it's a Six Sigma Operational Excellent black belt. Which means I can manipulate data, cut it up, slice it up, all that good stuff. But in this case, what it means is we manipulate the variables to drive, hopefully, the desired outcome in a statistically significant way to say, yes, that is over and above the noise. We've eliminated, or we've identified the right variable to manipulate to produce the desired outcome. So enough geek speak. So what we can do is, for a few days, Charles can, instead of, when he goes down to the cafe or the break room, instead of a soda, let's say, and some sort of sweet treat, he just has an apple. He still has the social interaction, and he's still taking a mental break. So do that for a few days. Is that craving satisfied? If so, then it wasn't the physical sweet that he was craving. It was either the emotional or the mental break, or both. So then for a few days, try to just get up and go talk to a couple people in another office or a cube, make a phone call, or whatever it is. Then so that would be providing the social interaction with no. If that satisfies it, then obviously it wasn't the physical craving or whatever. So that would help towards his goal of losing weight. And you're still having a mental break. All right. So if it was just that you wanted a mental break, you could surf for a few days. Try surfing the web, looking at Facebook, or doing whatever it is. Take a walk outside. So there's no social interaction, direct social interaction. So again, you can kind of just manipulate the variables one at a time. In this case, is the easiest way because there's only a few variables to see which one is going to work for you. So the outcome of all of this would be, let's say he's getting 200 to 400 calories less per day. 20 days in a month, work days, he's going to be consuming 4,000 to, let's say, 8,000 calories less. So anywhere from a little over a pound to over 2 pounds a month, which adds up, let's just call it 10 pounds to 25 pounds over time. So he did this, he found out which variable it was. So he started, just having a healthy treat, still went down to a cafe, had the mental break and the social interaction, and didn't need the sweet craving. So again, play with your routine to see how you can still satisfy the craving in a more healthy way. You have to have a plan in place because the craving from the cue or the trigger is going to happen. So you have to have a plan in place to address it. So as an example, in my own life, I enjoy both of my work and stuff like that. But Monday through Friday comes for a lot of people, and they kind of want to take either a mental break, some social interaction, or whatever. So they go to happy hour or they go to dinner. So for me, happy hour and or dinner is going to include money. It's also going to include something unhealthy. Drinking is unhealthy, calories and things like that. Going out to eat is going to be unhealthy for me. I need to watch my sodium, and I try to watch my sugar and things like that. But definitely it's hard to eat out without a bunch of sodium. So what can I do to take the place of going to happy hour, going out to dinner? So at the time I had a roommate who went to church on Sundays with his family, but this church also had a Friday evening service that is exactly the same as his Sunday service, or that they have on Sunday. I forget if it's 5 or 6 times on Sunday, but I already have a church that I go to on Sunday with my family that I love. So this church on Friday evening, I tried it, Cape Christian, and the music is amazing. It's the same music they have on Sundays, but it's really good on a Friday night for me. It's upbeat. It's like a Christian rock concert, the lights and all that. The pastors are younger and funnier, So in either case, on a Friday evening, that's kind of more, what I'm looking for that's different than what I'm already doing on Sunday. So I got that mental break from, work and thoughts and different things like that by going to church. I didn't spend money. I'm, going to tithe 10% in either way. Hopefully, and I'm not doing something unhealthy, but I'm still satisfying that craving of a mental break, as well as filling myself up spiritually and taking a mental break. So, and a little bit of social interaction. I don't need a lot of social interaction, but you do have some social interaction going to church and things like that. So, I created a different routine, satisfied the craving, and so just one example of many. The other thing the book kind of goes into is that there can be keystone habits. What a keystone habit may be is, let's say you're trying to lose weight. It's a habit that by doing it actually drives the desired activity, even though it may not be something you think directly would drive the activity. So there's two ways to think of keystone habits. In the case that it mentions in the book is those that kept a food journal a couple days a week while they were trying to lose weight versus those that didn't, lost twice as much weight. So keeping a food journal doesn't knock the food out of your hand, but psychologically, for whatever reason, you're more conscious of it, so you might make consciously healthier choices. It drove improvements in what you were eating for the week, reducing calories, so you lost more weight. So the food journal would be what's considered a keystone habit. It has spillover effects directly into the habit you're trying to create. Same thing can be thought of as far as in exercise. If you keep an exercise journal, track your progress and things like that. Financial planning, you can keep a budget and or track your investments. I don't recommend doing that every day, but monthly and stuff like that. So then there are other types of keystone habits, and what that may be is it not only impacts the activity that you're doing, the goal that you're trying to achieve, but it helps you in other areas of life too. So as an example, let's say you become disciplined about going to the gym, working out, jogging, things like that. So that creates self-discipline. Let's say you also have a habit of starting to eat healthier and delaying, instant gratification of getting something that's unhealthy. So in either case, you're developing discipline that can have spillover effects into other areas of your life. If you go to the gym and you're a smoker, I'm not a smoker, so I don't really know, but you're not going to walk out of the gym and probably light up and have a cigarette. Although I had a roommate who did that. But anyhow, for most people, they're not going to do that. But developing discipline and delaying gratification in diet or exercise can have spillover effects into other areas of your life. Financial discipline, kind of the same thing. So again, those would be some keystone habits. So kind of think of what kind of keystone habits can you have that can have carryover effects. So identify this might be a good habit that can carry over into multiple areas, as well as the area that you're doing, and that could have spillover effects. As an example, the pastor that I listen to online quite frequently, Craig Rochelle, he developed the habit of flossing in the morning and in the evening. Somehow or another, that made him trigger to have a healthier breakfast, not to have donuts or pastry or whatever. Same thing in the evening, he would have a healthier snack. So why does flossing do that? It just created a discipline and a mindset, a healthy mindset, so that he didn't want to follow it up with unhealthy activities. So again, the key is that habits are never going to go away, ingrained in the brain, they remain. Okay? So we have to, when that cue or trigger happens in the craving, if we don't satisfy the craving, yes, for a while, we might be able to, through willpower, to keep it dormant and stave it off. But eventually it's going to resurface. So the best plan of action is to come up with a routine that will satisfy the craving, create the reward, which is satisfying the craving. So get a plan in place for a few habits that you want to break bad habits and or create a good habit. I'm not sure if he goes over it in the video, but this was a kind of a strange one. For those who rewarded themselves after exercising for a few weeks with chocolate, it somehow made them keep exercising more or longer versus those who didn't. So in some cases, to start a new habit, you have to reward yourself with something that seems counterintuitive or counterproductive with what you're trying to do. Now, in that study, after a couple weeks, they no longer did the chocolate, but they kept exercising versus the other group, more of them did not. So you may have to do it, reward yourself in some way for a period of time till the habit kicks over. So this was not specifically addressed in the book, The Power of Habit, but from other research. Some people hear about this magic 21 days and a habit becomes ingrained. That may be for some habits, maybe less for some habits, but for many habits, there's no magic number, 21 days, and all of a sudden a habit is made. So again, think of ways to reward yourself till it becomes a habit. Take the reward away, make sure you're still doing it, and things like that. So as exercise, as an example, we're about to start New Year's and New Year's resolutions and all that good stuff. And what we'll see at the gym is January will be the busiest month of the year, then especially here in Southwest Florida, but in general, January will be the busiest month of the year. That typically lasts for about 4 weeks to 6 weeks. So 6 weeks seems to be that magic sticking point. If you can get yourself past that 6 week, 4 to 6 week period, whatever you got to do, join some group fitness classes to get some accountability partners or something like that. If it's in your budget, hire a personal trainer. I don't think you need personal trainers forever, even though I am one. But if that is what's going to keep you going, knowing that you only have to do it for a little while to establish the habit, know what you're doing, make you feel comfortable and things like that, do it. It's worth the investment in yourself. So hopefully, again, pick up the book if you want to, or look at some of Charles's other videos. But think again, we have to develop the routine to satisfy the craving, whether it be mental, physical, or emotional, to truly change bad habits permanently. They don't go away; they remain ingrained in the brain. So I'll see I have the habit of rhyming too. And that's not going to go away. I don't know how to replace that one, and quite honestly, I don't want to. So anyhow, hopefully you found this helpful. Drop me a note to tell me if there are other parts of mindset that you want to work on. The next one we're going to do, this one again is going to be a little longer. The next one's going to be a little longer too. I'll have maybe have two versions of it, a shorter version and a longer version of it, but it's mostly going to be that person talking. She does an amazing job of doing that, but it goes along the lines with habit. She references this book actually, and I read that book after this one, but she references some of the work that's done in this book, and it kind of lines up right with it. So drop me a line, let me know your thoughts, where you want to see this series go, and how Fitness Southwest Florida can help you. Positive, healthy mindset, and get fit for life. All right, have a great afternoon. Thanks.